Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. Today it's going to be one that's a bit different. We are going to be looking at some tweaks that can make World of Warcraft a bit more, well, fun and responsive to play, and also remove some little annoyances with how the game works. This is all about, like, time savers, reducing needless clicks, attempting to improve the game feel, stuff like that. Basically, streamlining the everyday actions. And if there's something that you do that I don't cover in this video, be sure to let me know down in the comments. And let's just get kicked off with ground target macros. This is one of my favorite game tweaks. It allows you to instantly cast a ground target spell at your cursor location just by clicking the ability's hotkey. Basically, it instantly gets around you bringing up the aiming target and then having to click somewhere with the left mouse. This means that it just feels more responsive to use those abilities, and overall, it's a little bit faster. It also allows for sort of flick reflexes, like twitch reflexes, to kick in, which makes some abilities a lot more fun. Now, the fewer steps and clicks needed is, I think far better. There's less noise for your brain to deal with, and I feel this is best when, it's abilities like Heroic Leap, but it's also great for something like quickly throwing down a Flame Strike, Healing Rain Totem, any stuff like that that can be targeted on the ground. Next, we've got the player macro. Now, this came along at the same time as the cursor targeting functionality that was added, and that I talked about in the first point. Basically, using this in a macro allows you to drop an ability at your character's feet. This is really handy for quickly firing off certain abilities like the, the Fire Sigil that, Vengeance Demon Hunter has. You can just drop that underneath your character. Oftentimes, targeting is it's a needless step in some situations, and in those, this can be very helpful. What's even better is you can use a modifier condition to swap between using the cursor targeting and this. So if you're a hunter, right, you could normally have it so that you drop a trap at the position of your mouse cursor, but if you hold in a modify key, you can make it so that you drop, your trap at the mouse position. This means that it's super flexible, and it's really great for cutting down your reaction times and basically getting shit done easier. Plus, I think the more steps that are removed, the more you kind of feel, like you're really in the moment, and it's just more fun to control your character. Next, we've got Enhanced Auto Run. This is a strange macro that I kind of pieced together. So it does two things. First, it locks your steering to be where you're looking, so it's basically as if you were holding down the right mouse button, but you don't need to hold down the right mouse button. And then it sort of does auto run. Now, auto run is a protected function, so macros can't use it, but what this instead does is it opens up the accessibility move pad, hides it, and then uses that. So essentially, it can toggle a form of auto run on and off. So basically, when you hotkey this and you click it, you'll start auto running, and you'll be able to steer your character super easily with the mouse. Whenever you click it again, all those things will stop. What's handy about this is you don't need to do any mouse clicks or anything like that. You just hit the macro, you can look at your phone, glance at the screen, steer. It's very comfortable to use, and it's something that I've been enjoying quite a lot over the last few days since I made it. Next, we've got a really awesome one that I only found out about instantly, and that is Help Harm Macros. This is such a damn nice bit of functionality, and these really can streamline your gameplay and your action bars, and just, there's less clicking and less thinking involved. So these macros will allow you to do different things based on whether a target is friendly or hostile. The main group of players who will find use for this is healers, so let's just say you're, firing off your regular filler healing spell on the 1 key. Now with a Help Harm macro, you can make it so that same key, if you hit it while you're mousing over a friendly player's unit, it will heal them, but if you're mousing over a hostile unit, it will cast one of your offensive spells. Now this really helps you consolidate the number of buttons that you're dealing with, as most healers also have a simplistic DPS rotation that they use in their downtime. And then this is probably of even more use to the disciplined priests out there, for whom dealing damage is a really, really important part of healing. And then also Mouseover Macros. Now by this stage, we pretty much all know what they are. It will cast a spell on the target that your mouse is hovering over, be that an actual, NPC in the world or a unit frame. Now this is handy because you don't need to click on the target, select them, and then click your spell. You just sort of do both those things at once naturally. It's very, very nice and intuitive. Now, while this is mostly used for healers, I actually use them on my DPS and tank characters as well. Using a mouse over interrupt macro can be an absolute time saver. Well, lifesaver, because it's a time saver. Basically, when you see an enemy casting something, you can just zip the mouse over, quickly hit your button, interrupt them, and you've never dropped target from the main thing that you're attacking, which is really, really cool. It's also nicer than, tab targeting around where you could miss something, but that said, you do need to be quite precise with the mouse for this to actually work out well. Now, this can also be combined with a Help Harm macro to make attacking bosses and healing allies, just really, really comfortable. Next, I've got the broad topic of dealing with dialogue. Sometimes dialogue can be a bit of a chore. You click on an NPC and then you gotta drag the mouse all the way over to the side of the screen and then click on an option, and oh my god, it's a bit fiddly. Like using a mouse, it's intuitive, it's simple, but it's kind of slow. You can partially solve this problem with a generic accept/decline macro, or using an add-on like dialogue keys. An accept or decline macro will basically hit either yes or no to a dialogue option that's given to you. That includes things like, say, deleting items, so it's really, really useful. Now, if an NPC has multiple dialogue options, then dialogue keys will number them so that you can select them with your keyboard. Basically, this just cuts out mouse movement and makes NPC interactions flow quite a bit nicer. Next, we've got targeting. Now, I think this one's really awesome. Targeting can be really annoying in MMOs, especially, tab targeting. Like, it works 95% of the time, and it's going to be annoying as hell that 5%. So I've got a decently robust enemy targeting setup that gives me a lot of options and allows for me to quickly target just about everything. Most importantly, it's in a comfortable manner. So first, I use my mouse wheel to cycle through enemies. Now, I do like to use zoom control with the mouse wheel, so I do use a modifier for the targeting, but, you can use just mouse up, mouse down if you want. Now, I have mouse up and down bound to target next and previous enemy. That means I can easily cycle between all the enemies around me. Now, this is amazing if you're a multi-dotting class, and generally, it's just a really nice increase to the game's usability. Although sometimes you just want to target what's right in front of you. You want super directional targeting. That's where target scan comes in. Now, sadly, this is a protected function that cannot be used in a macro, but basically here's how it works. Whenever you hold down its hotkey, it scans enemies. It selects basically just based on in front of your character. Now you can see a preview highlight underneath enemies, and then whenever you release the button, it will target that enemy. Now this is quite different from the normal tab targeting, but it's a really useful tool depending on the situation. I have this bound to the middle mouse button, so a simple click of that will basically just have me targeting exactly what is in front of me. I found that tanks also tend to use this scan feature quite a lot, but overall, that's my targeting setup and I absolutely love it. It's been a great help. Next, let's talk about utility keybindings. Now, first, I do talk about my whole keybind setup in this video, so there's no need to completely repeat myself here, but looking beyond my character ability bindings and my spells and all that, there are some common things that I do a lot, such as say mounting up or hearthing. And I choose to bind these as, it just ends up being a lot less fiddly than opening up my bags and clicking my Hearthstone. Now, this is the important bit though. I can't use binds that make sense for normal abilities, so basically this is my solution. I mount up using shift and space. This is really simple because it's where your hands are normally resting, and it's not the kind of place you would put a core ability anyway because it wouldn't really suit what your fingers are doing in combat, but otherwise, it's very convenient, so it's the perfect place to put it. Then for my Hearthstone, for me that's command/control and space. You can even make a macro that consolidates multiple teleports, such as say a regular Hearthstone and a Dalaran Hearthstone, into a single macro, with a modifier key toggling between them. It's another pretty awesome thing you can do. There is another way though, if you want to cut down on key bindings, but don't want to do sort of what I said above. You can use OPI and its radial menus. Basically, you can use that to consolidate all of the various utility buttons that you may hit. You can just put them all in there. OPI has these beautiful radial menus. You can nest them. It's all quite great. The great thing about OPI is you just get the muscle memory for a lot of the things, so really using it's as simple as hitting the hotkey, flicking the mouse in a direction, releasing the hotkey, and boom, off you go. Super, super simple. Now, many people also like to bind the auto-run toggle to an easily accessible key. That's something that I pretty much do with the enhanced auto-run macro that I talked about earlier. Next, I want to talk about Weakauras. Normally, Weakauras is used for creating icons and bars that will help you track important class-related information, such as cooldowns and buff durations, and that's awesome. Great, but one thing that I've started to do with Weakauras is use its sound functionality a little bit more, and here's why. Sometimes your eyes, they're busy. There's a lot of shit going on, and really in Warcraft these days, that's doubly true. Now, this can lead to sometimes your eyes just don't notice that something's happened, maybe your intuition hasn't kicked in, you miss something, and it's not good. Well, here's the thing, while your eyes might be busy as hell, your ears are probably not. So, by putting some sound cues in, using Weakauras, you can have an extra layer of protection against completely derping out. You can also use Weakaura sounds to alert you to things that could normally be easily missed. For example, when I was doing my Windwalker Monk Artifact Challenge, Granted, I know it's one of the easier artifact challenges, but I made it so that the main cast, the big enemy triggers, which is very dangerous, it has a sound effect. So no matter what was going on, I knew, oh, if I hear that, I need to interrupt him as soon as possible. Basically, this is just another tool in your toolbox, and I've started getting really interested in using sounds and Weakauras to enhance the feedback of the game, so I'm just suggesting that that's a thing that we all maybe start doing a little bit more. Next, I want to talk about Immersion. So many of the things that I've talked about in this video are making gameplay more streamlined or attempting to reduce clunk in the game's controls. This add-on is just flat out a really nice enhancement to how the game feels to play, especially when you are doing quest content, so I'd really recommend it for the next expansion when the leveling comes out. Immersion replaces the various quest dialogue boxes, and it unifies everything within the style of the Blizzard talking head frame, so basically it feels a lot more modern. It displays dialogue in a way that feels more conversational, with the big improvement being that it gets rid of big, walls of text. This means the dialogue is more scannable and readable, so it's easier to get a grip of what's actually being said. Overall, it's a really fantastic augmentation to the game. I recommend you do it. It's worth disclosing. The Monk, the developer of that add-on, me and him have worked together on some paid project stuff back with WoW Tales. Of course, it didn't pan out, but it's worth you knowing that. But still, I think it's a brilliant add-on, so you should really check it out. And I guess just on the topic of UI, do a UI overhaul, or at least consider it. UI is a major part of making a game, and a bad UI can often be the difference between a game being really fun or really frustrating. So getting your UI right is a great way to enjoy the game more, especially because Blizzard doesn't do really any of that design for you. It's offloaded to us to do for ourselves, oddly enough. Now, I really do think that good UI can make the game more fun and responsive, so ideally for me the best way to do that is to cut your UI down as much as you can. So many UIs are bloated to the point where they hurt more than they help, often providing more distractions than useful information. I would always recommend having a UI being as clean as possible so that you can see what's going on in the game world. What happens is that the less information is shown on the screen overall, the more you're actually able to focus on because you're not overwhelmed by the noise. It's, I think because of this that I firmly think that, you get a very effective UI by cutting out that visual noise and simplifying things. I'd recommend browsing through the WoW UI subreddit for inspiration, and perhaps even looking at some other games. Now, my current UI, it's not really ideal right now as it's meant to be generic across all classes, but you can make things super tailored to like the UI of a specific class. Weakauras can be very useful. I'd recommend checking out Leaf UI. It's a pretty cool little idea that I found in the Reddit for WoW UI. But overall, yeah, just think about UI and can you simplify it and make it a little bit nicer. I would also say that if you're not using a fully skinned UI, it might be worth getting something like Mask and basically unifying all of your buttons with the same sort of texture and theme. This can make it feel a bit more cohesively designed and sort of visually just makes sense instead of being a hodgepodge of, different styles. And the same goes for fonts as well. I generally recommend sticking to maybe 2 or 3 fonts, ideally maybe 1 or 2 overall. And next we've got Dynamic Cam, which is an add-on that allows for situational control of the World of Warcraft camera, be it using the new Action Cam functionality or the traditional camera. The Action Cam seems to be like Marmite. It's looked down upon by some as a kind of, it's fun and casual, but I think for others it is seen as an interesting experiment that could make the game feel like it's actually from the current decade. I'm in the latter camp of people, which I think is kind of obvious, even though I don't regularly use the Action Cam, past using it as a tool to get footage for some of my video sequences. I constantly do get messages though from people who find the game to be a lot more fun with the Action Cam and Dynamic Cam add-on, so it's worth bringing it up here. Plus, there's also a few good utilitarian uses for it. Now, I've talked about Dynamic Cam plenty of times, but basically, using Dynamic Cam gives you more control. You can basically sort of program what you want it to do in various situations, such as being in combat, being mounted, NPC dialogue, all those things. You can just tailor what your camera is going to be like in those scenarios, and this can help you to craft a more sort of modern feeling version of the game. Though I've always had a bit of a problem where I just feel like it looks kind of ugly with how WoW UIs tend to look. I'm currently working on a fix for that, but that will probably be a few weeks or months. Now, you can use Dynamic Cam to change things like zoom behavior for large NPCs, such as bosses, to frame them at a different angle so that you're not always looking at your feet. This can be a bit more comfortable and help your situational awareness in some settings, and maybe for some people, if they find like they get motion sick or whatever, just staring at a boss's foot, then maybe changing the pitch angle on on dynamic cam would help you get around that issue. Next is some general add-on advice. Some add-ons can be amazingly helpful, and I've already made 2 videos going over the various ones that I use a lot, and a lot of them are sort of in the theme of this video, just making the game feel a bit more nice to play. You can check those out in the video description. I don't want to, pad this video or anything like that. The second video also contains a look through my own UI, so you can take a look at that. But there you go. I think that these tweaks, you can use as many of them or as few of them as you want, but I think when you put them together, you can make just some little helpful things for the game that make it a little bit more comfortable to play. Now, if there are any tweaks sort of just along the lines of what I use here that, you've came up with and you want to share them, you can drop them down in the comments. I'll definitely be reading them, and, at some point in the future, I will probably do a video like this if there's enough new stuff to show, especially if Blizzard adds some new macro conditionals or, if a new patch just updates what we can actually do in terms of the UI. But that's it for this video, so thank you very much for watching. If you want to support the work that we do, you can check out the Patreon, which is key to helping get Connell on board as a video editor, which has been humongously helpful. But aside from that, guys, cheers. I'll see you next time.